Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with the last of Amalgam Comics Wave 2. Today,
brah, reviewing all these comics by yourself must be exhausting. If only there was someone somewhere who could, help you out, lighten the load, brah.
You know what? Fine. You want in on this, by all means. In fact, I'll go one better and let you host this entire episode yourself.
Really? For real?
Yes, I will step aside and you can handle the review any way you want.
Oh, cool, bro. Awesome. Man, this is gonna be sweet. Okay, what am I taking issue with today?
Well, there's just one comic left. Super Soldier Man of War #1.
Oh, I never read that one, brah.
Leave.
But you said that I'm running in terror because I choose to, not because you told me to, brah.
Yeesh. So angry right now, I have no idea what could possibly make me any less—
Hello.
Boo! The cover here looks pretty good, very evocative of the era they're portraying, and feels very much like it could have worked back then. Part of the title being a banner waving in the air, something a lot more common back then. Background is a yellow gradient, so maybe it's early morning as our hero is being shot at, fire raging behind him as he's joined by Sergeant Rock, the Howlin Commandos, and of course photographer Jimmy Olsen. And it's not every day you see a soldier firing his gun so happily while there's a noticeable flower in his hat. Maybe he's some kind of proto-hippie. Sure, most of the time he's all about the peace and love, but he still enjoys punching Nazis. Co-plotted by Mark Waid and Dave Gibbons, the latter on script and pencils, and joined on art duties by Jimmy Palmiotti and Angus McKee, we begin in 1942, where our main hero is flying into the clubhouse of the All-Star Winter Squadron. Between the hokey name and calling their base a clubhouse, I'm wondering if these are actual superheroes and not just a bunch of cosplayers SS is humoring. Also, he seems to be flying in from above. So did he crash through the roof and the debris is on its way, or is there a really high window they leave open for him? Anyway, he's telling the winners he's been tasked with following some stolen government equipment overseas in hopes of catching the recipient. A mission so secretive he couldn't even be told what it is he's looking after. I'm guessing it's some kind of deadly cargo. Mostly because that's the title of the story. You can see it hovering right over there. Also, bit of a coloring error on this American flag here. It has its stars over a field of red instead of blue. So, after the war, should we expect the All-Star Winter Squadron to be accused of being communists and then have to go through fear-mongering hearings that the country eventually looks back on in shame? Just curious. The fighting legend of World War II is going on an undercover mission, so he has to do this alone without the aid of Speedster Whiz or their token latchkey kid.
Brooklyn Barnes, you're so incorrigible. Anything to skip school. Oh, you kids stay in your romanticized concept of the horrors of war, preferring to fight armed fascists on foreign soil instead of learning algebra. Tee-hee!
American Belle seems very concerned about this mission in a way that indicates more romantic inclinations towards the soldier. Then we're introduced to a character that was mentioned once in the Iron Lantern comic, Human Lantern, apparently a mashup of Alan Scott and the Human Torch, probably the original Android version. He's baked a cake, but only the kid has some, since everyone else has an excuse, like a diet, because that's so ladylike for the 1940s, or being too good for cake, like Aquamariner. Hey, no one is too good for cake. Cake is awesome. And your name is redundant. And your face smells. Soups flies off through a skylight. Makes a lot more sense than crashing through, like I said earlier, I'll grant. But needs to make a stop at the Daily Planet first. And his friends, most of them anyway, bid him a safe journey.
Kick a Nazi for me, will ya?
I rather like that idea.
I think we should all kick a Nazi in honor of this small, fictional child that only ever appeared in this single comic book. In fact, kicked Nazis for everyone!
Shortly, frontline artist Corporal Clark Kent is headed to a troop ship with Private Jimmy Olsen, as their mysterious cargo is being loaded on board. It's lined with lead, blocking any X-ray vision, so the contents are still unknown. At least now they know which crate they need to keep their eye on during their transatlantic journey. Lois Lane calls out, waving goodbye to Clark, but he doesn't reciprocate. As she drives off, we learn that he realized not even Super Soldier could win the battle for her heart after she met Lex Luthor, whom she later married.
Sure, I could have punched his head off, thrown him into the sun, or sneezed him to Mars, or used my heat vision to cook him from the inside out, but that wouldn't be gentlemanly. The deceitful war profiteer won her affection fair and square, probably. Wait a minute.
That night, after the ship had already set sail, a sergeant decides to mess with Kent and Olsen, 'cause one of them was in his seat. But Sergeant Rock and his Howlin Commandos step in, and a fight immediately ensues in the mess hall. Now that is things escalating quickly, and yet I don't find it as strange as one of the commandos apparently being nicknamed Ice Cream. Maybe he's really cold and gives people headaches when they're around him too much. Anyway, Clark discreetly disrupts the fight with a gust of super breath, knocking the fighters over, but somehow going unnoticed by the guy that blames him for the brawl. You know, for sitting in a chair. So he throws one at his head. Rock catches it as the MPs walk in to break up the chaos, and they're easily swayed by the sergeant saying he'll handle his men. Yeah, leave disciplining them to the guy that basically encouraged them to fight in the first place. Makes total sense. But he did save Clark's invulnerability from being exposed, because I guess it would have been too tricky for him to fake being in pain for a while, and he figures he owes Rock.
I should get him a gift basket. What am I thinking? This is the 1940s. I think a more appropriate thank you would be a couple of beers and a manly punch in the arm. It'll probably break, but he might appreciate that even more.
A few nights later, Jimmy and Clark notice someone skulking about the cargo hold. They follow, and James snaps a picture before Clark wanted him to, feeling it was evidence enough. But their quarry seems to be lost, unable to read the signs written in English because ils usent le French. Kent buys the story for the moment, but warns that the area is restricted and the military police might not take this as kindly, so the stranger takes off. An alarm sounds, warning that their convoy is headed for some icebergs, presumed to have broken off from a larger glacier. Naturally, Clark ducks away to change, and moments later, "Hey, look, there! Up in the sky! Is it a bomber? Is it a shell? No, it's Super Soldier!"
I'm beginning to wonder if maybe half the reason they decided to do another Super Soldier comic was because the first time they forgot to reference that classic dialogue sequence. I mean, there have been far worse reasons to do much larger comic events.
As Olsen begins snapping pictures, SS begins smashing larger icebergs, and melting the smaller ones with his heat vision.
Because there's no way melting icebergs could ever pose a problem. Oy.
With the path cleared, the grateful troops cheer on the superhero as he flies off and returns as Clark on the sly. The ship arrives in England, and no sooner do they disembark than the Howlin Commandos hop in a jeep and take off for the front. The French stranger is spotted again, but there are bigger concerns than Jimmy's paranoia. Soups has an appointment to keep, meaning Olsen will need to keep an eye on their cargo on his own for a spell. If any trouble pops up, he's always got that signal watch. Later, in London, Super Soldier goes to a party. Real dangerous, this mission. He chats with Winston Churchill and finds Lex Luthor there as well, a testament to his pretending to be on the side of the Allies. But before the hors d'oeuvres can be passed out, Clark hears the signal watch and excuses himself. He arrives back at the docks where his pal is regaining consciousness, saying some suspicious-looking fishermen took the crate he was watching after their French acquaintance knocked the photographer out. He figures they rowed out to sea, and that's when he sees U-boats in the distance. Soups heads out to retrieve Frenchie and the cargo, as well as sink those ships, but he's got to stop those torpedoes fired at the dock first.
The guy who launched them is totally going to take credit for distracting their enemy when he only hit the button because he was trying to swat a fly.
He pulls the projectiles out of the water since they're too close to detonate, and disables their explosives with precise heat vision. Unfortunately, the enemy submarines have fired several more torpedoes, so it's back to work for Clark.
That guy had a lot of difficulty trying to kill that fly.
Before long, Super Soldier has disabled all the missiles, but it allowed the Nazi dirtbags to get away with the cargo he was supposed to protect. With little else to do, he heads back to the banquet, because who can mope on an empty stomach? Churchill receives a report on the matter and whispers to the star-spangled guest that he shouldn't be too hard on himself. Maybe this battle was lost, but they've still got a war to win, and plenty of agents in the field.
And most important of all, the dessert cart's being rolled out, so it's not all bad, is it? What?
We then go from fancy dining to the Howlin Commandos taken captive and brought to Castle Zemo, where its owner awaits them with the lost French shipmate whom the Howlers assume was the one that betrayed them. Just as a special guest arrives for Sockface, the Commandos are locked up, but hours later are met with their traitor, who turns out to be neither traitor nor a dude. She's actually Mademoiselle Peggy, a fusion of Peggy Carter and Mademoiselle Marie. You might remember me bringing up in my Batman Eternal review as being the pre-crisis mother to Alfred Pennyworth's daughter Julia, but moving on. She was the resistance guide the Howlers were supposed to meet up with, and it turns out that whoever betrayed them actually did them a solid, because Peggy leads them to a hidden weapons vault so they can complete their mission.
Wahoo! Excellent idea. Make a lot of noise in the enemy castle. No way can be heard raiding their guns and ammo. Are we sure they were betrayed and they didn't just stink at being stealthy?
Over wine, Major Zemo confirms the arrival of the cargo and that his guest has convinced their Charlie Chaplin mustache-stealing scumbag of a leader that robotics will lead the Nazis to victory. Gunfire is heard outside, and the Howlers are seen free, though how can the Major see when his hood has no eye holes? They're mowing down enemy goons as they make their way to the inner courtyard, where Zemo's lab is located. But they hit a bit of a snag when faced with the War Wheel, shooting fire and bullets at our heroes, whose weapons prove fairly ineffective against it. Feeling responsible, I guess because she knew about the machine and didn't think it'd be operational so soon, Peggy runs to get help, but is soon struck down. Nazis approach to see if she's dead, but she's shown to be playing possum. She throws a grenade behind her aggressors, takes out more goons in the radio room like a boss, then, battered and bleeding, radios London to send in Big American before everything is lost. Just as the wheel closes in on the Commandos, Super Soldier flies in to take care of it, and Olsen tagging along to take photos. Naturally, neither bullets nor flames do much against Clark. "Stop it! That tickles!" "I said stop it!"
I was being serious! I don't like being tickled! The last time someone managed to do that, I sunk an entire island! Respect my personal space!
After literally shaking the operators of the wheel out like the last crumbs of a bag of chips, Soups and Sergeant Rock are ready to roll and take out the rest of the castle, until Olsen spots Peggy nearby, realizing she was the lost Frenchman on the ship. And it turns out she knocked him out at the dock earlier to avoid the Nazis killing him instead. She's actually been working with Washington this whole time, and hands over blueprints for what the Axis powers plan to do with the cargo they stole. But Super Soldier's X-ray vision shows she's going to die without immediate medical attention. Rock tells Soups to get her to a hospital while they deal with the secrets beneath Zemo Castle. After they storm inside and question one of the scientists, with Olsen snapping away, they follow a staircase to a dock, and too late to stop the sub already submerging. "Come back and fight!"
Well, we were going to escape to continue our evil plot, but the guy really wants to fight us. Okay, everyone, hold on. This U-boat is making a U-turn. No time to question how I heard him through water and metal.
The sub does get away, but on the plus side, the War Wheel is wrecked, and they've got the plans to Zemo's secret weapon, so it's not all bad. On the sub, however, Zemo's guest, who is unsurprisingly Lex Luthor, isn't concerned. He still has his ultimate goal within his sights. The comic ends with him holding the plans to alter Metallo, what Soups fought in the Wave 1 issue, and the revelation of the secret cargo the hero was tasked with protecting, the Kryptonian rocket, and a large chunk of kryptonite, or green K in this universe, in the canopy.
Kind of an odd place for it, but either the people that crated it up decided to conserve a little bit of space, or jewelry stores are getting really elaborate with their gift boxes these days. That was Super Soldier Man of War #1, and I rather enjoyed it.
I've never been the biggest fan of war stories, and it felt like they took some liberties with how those in the service act, if only to show off Rock's clout, but the story overall is a good one. A believable reason to have Clark undercover, a good crossover with another band of World War II characters, and some awesome moments for Surprise Edition Mademoiselle Peggy. A few things seemed a little head-scratching at first, but made more sense when I thought about them more. For one thing, it might come off as contrived that Soldier was so distracted by a handful of torpedoes that he couldn't go after the U-boats. But remember, he's not really Superman. He has a lot of the same powers, but he isn't as powerful. He might not be able to lift as much or move as quickly, for example, if we were to compare him to most versions of Kal-El we're familiar with. That may also explain why he didn't just move the icebergs out of the way. And as to why he wasn't told about the alien ship, well, again, he's not the alien. He's just a soldier that was given a super serum laced with the DNA of the baby that tragically didn't survive the crash. Depending on his actual rank in the military, there might not be a reason for his superiors to tell him, even if he is a popular superhero. Or maybe that was just for dramatic tension. I did notice they didn't resolve the subplot of who betrayed the Howlers. Maybe they didn't have enough time, or maybe they wanted to leave it ambiguous, because if this were an ongoing, it would be revealed later. Or maybe we're supposed to assume it was Lex Luthor. The art has a classic vibe to it that works for the time they're depicting. If you liked the first Super Soldier comic, you'll probably like this one, and not just for the connective story threads.
That also does it for the Amalgam Comics in general. We've had some hits, we've had some misses. Some #1s worked better as one-shots than ongoing series, and maybe that's indicative of the concept itself. Maybe it worked for the time, and maybe it's not something to be repeatedly looked at over and over, or continued. While it does sound interesting, certain comic companies and writers certainly make the prospect seem more horrifying than it did in the 90s. Now I'm scared and angry. Skangry? I'm the angry spork, and man, have I got issues. Now this is gonna haunt me for a while.